Can you feel it? If you think all that's happening right now would be happening if she was in the White House, think again. Rats are fleeing the sinking ship. Patriots are rising. Truth is being dispensed nationwide like never before. And even terrorists in Saudi Arabia are being purged. First, Donna Brazile, the disgraced CNN contributor and former DNC chair who got caught giving presidential debate questions to Hillary Clinton, now openly admits the entire DNC primary was a rigged inside job for Hillary.
This victory fund agreement, Brazile notes, had been signed in August 2015, just 4 months after Hillary announced her candidacy, and nearly a year before she officially had the nomination.
And for some unknown reason, although we can speculate, she says she feared for her life after the murder of Seth Rich. And then there's Tony Podesta, who, given the power of the DC Podesta lobbying group, is even more powerful than his brother John. Tony just stepped down in disgrace from Podesta Group amid a new probe by Robert Mueller because among Tony Podesta's clients was Uranium One. And as Sebastian Gorka, the former deputy assistant to President Trump, explains, the mounting scandals against these criminals can no longer be hidden by the mainstream media.
There's so many scandals, we have to separate them. Number one, there's the Uranium One deal. That's treasonous, okay? We have to deal with that. Second, there's the dodgy dossier, which is about Russian disinformation being used to slander Donald Trump. And then, thirdly, there's James Comey using that disinformation to create a special prosecutor trigger that is used to investigate the president. And then lastly, the fourth story is Fusion GPS.
And it's all coming out. And as George Webb explains, it can bring them all down.
Podesta controls ARMZ Uranium Holding Company. That's why I'm naming Podesta Group. That's why I'm naming ARMZ. That's why I'm naming the DNC. That's why I'm naming the Iwan spy ring. That's why I'm naming Hillary for America.
And according to George Webb, Tony Podesta was basically the hitman for Hillary.
The reason why I'm suing Tony Podesta and the Podesta Group is because they're the head of the octopus. And the arms of the octopus that they control is Hillary for America. He's the chairman. And then in turn, they then took control of the DNC, which had control of the Iwan spy ring. So this is all one arm and one tentacle it's all one lawsuit.
And then there's the purge in Saudi Arabia. In total, 11 princes, 4 serving ministers, 10 ex-ministers, and a dozen high officials detained on the orders of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Perhaps it's all lining up for World War III with Iran as the ultimate boogeyman. But here's a fact. Saudi Arabia has long been the source of funding for international terror. In 2014, Prince Bandar bin Sultan threatened Russian President Vladimir Putin with terrorist attacks against the Sochi Olympics by Chechen rebels he openly admitted to controlling if Putin refused to withdraw his backing for Assad and the Syrian government. Putin did not back down, and Russia was hit.
A video posted online shows 2 men who claim to be the suicide bombers behind one of last month's bloody bombings in Volgograd, Russia. The video is just adding to the fear that Russia won't be able to stop a terror attack at the Olympic Games.
And then there's the poison gas attack in the Damascus suburb of Ghouta, blamed on Assad, later proven to be sponsored by Saudi Arabia.
The Saudis play a principal role here. I mean, Saudi Arabia's role in Syria cannot be overstated.
Militants in the Damascus suburb of Ghouta admitted to Dale Gavlock, a freelance AP journalist who broke the story for Mint Press News, that they received the chemical weapons from Saudi Arabia.
And of course, the Saudi Arabian involvement in 9/11.
Newly declassified information from a U.S. report on the 9/11 attacks have revealed links between al-Qaeda operatives and former Saudi ambassador to the U.S. Prince Bandar bin Sultan. The revelations have further fueled speculations about possible Saudi government involvement in the attacks.
So it should come as some relief that this Saudi billionaire, Prince Al-Walid Talal, an Obama and Hillary Clinton cheerleader who once tweeted this to Donald Trump, "You are a disgrace not only to the GOP, but to all America. Withdraw from the U.S. presidential race, as you will never win." To which Trump responded, "Dopey Prince Al-Walid Talal wants to control our U.S. politicians with daddy's money. Can't do it when I get elected." Trump 2016. And now one of those men has been arrested. As Anon writes, do you feel it? The reason Antifa's well-planned violent revolt didn't happen is that suddenly the money wasn't there. The signs were all made, the posters all printed, and Antifa thugs were primed for violence. But two things never showed, the leaders and the money. So no Antifa got bussed into the cities, nobody got paid, and the leaders didn't show either. Saudi Arabia was funneling a lot of money into the DNC and Media Matters. That's on record. But Trump changed something with SAE, and now they are arresting their own princes for corruption, including one who owns more of Twitter than Jack Dorsey. The balance of power with Saud changed abruptly. The money suddenly stopped flowing, and they have turned off their support of the DNC. Do you feel it? We won. Incidentally, according to journalist William Craddock, Al-Walid bin Talal owns the Four Seasons, which in turn owns floors 35 through 39 of Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. Just a coincidence, right? Do you feel it? Big things are going down. Oh, by the way, speaking of terror and 9/11, Bakr bin Laden, chairman of Saudi bin Laden Group and brother of CIA asset Osama bin Laden, was also among those arrested in the purge. A man who knows all too well that the official story about his brother pulling off the single greatest act of terror on American soil in history is a fairy.
As Roy Moore was denying the allegations that helped cost him the Alabama Senate race, White House correspondents increasingly peppered the press secretary with questions about Donald Trump's accusers from 2016.
I wanted to ask you about the women who came forward today against the president.
Look, the president has addressed these accusations directly and denied all of these allegations.
What about your own accusers, though? He has accusers as well.
Look, and can you stand here right now and say without a doubt, 100% certainty that the more than dozen women who have come forward to accuse this president of misconduct are lying?
The sexual allegation circus and the plot to take down the president. In the dangerous climate we have today that the liberals have created, allegations are enough to strip anyone, especially any man, of his career.
And after Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand went on CNN and demanded that Trump resign, the president hit back on Twitter saying, lightweight Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a total flunky for Chuck Schumer and someone who would come to my office begging for campaign contributions not so long ago and would do anything for them.
Did you interpret that tweet as a sexual reference, that you would trade sexual favors for campaign cash? Is that what the president was saying about you?
Well, certainly that's how I and many people read it, and it was certainly just a sexist smear.
That is reprehensible that the President of the United States would say something so derogatory and disgusting about a woman.
When you say, oh, my God, that's sexist, in your head, you're saying that women cannot handle the same insult that a man. And that the weird thing about Trump is he insults everybody.
So, Molly, several of the Trump accusers appear on Megyn Kelly's NBC show. Are the media trying to take a 2016 story, and I'm not saying these aren't serious allegations, and he has denied them repeatedly, and recast it as a 2017 story?
I mean, partly it's legitimate, right? This is the story of the moment, and there are these stories out there. And in another way, this is why we have elections. We litigate these things. This behavior by Donald Trump is well known going back decades, and people knowingly elected him president. So there is an aspect to this that does seem a bit old news. In general, though, this is just a story that needs to be covered without people just run to accept any allegation. And I think we need to see a little bit more criticism from the media on that.
What do you make, Ruth, of the media justification that we're in a new environment now, and therefore in the wake of Harvey Weinstein and Louis C.K. and Kevin Spacey and Charlie Rose and Matt Lauer, we should revisit these allegations against Trump for that reason?
Well, I think Molly was right. It was inevitable that it was going to come up. And by the way, the president did tell us not only that these women were liars, but that they would be sued after the election. So kind of waiting for those lawsuits. Meanwhile, there's a defamation lawsuit filed by at least one of the women who's trying to get discovery and like to see the deposition of the president on that one. It is just inevitable that in the Harvey Weinstein et al., and the all keeps growing every day environment, that we were going to be talking about Donald Trump.
Libby, when so many White House correspondents in a row, and we could have shown more of those, asked Sarah Huckabee Sanders about allegations that surfaced a year ago, can it look like the press is pushing this issue?
I think they're following the story because Donald Trump himself opened this door when he talked about Roy Moore, when he said that he didn't even know these women who were accusing him, which he clearly does know them. One of them was an Apprentice contestant, and there's footage of him firing her, on TV. be, it raises more questions. He said he didn't know the women. Sarah Huckabee Sanders gave it a caveat and said the women who have come out in this press conference. But that was putting a fine point on it that the president himself had not made. And so journalists are going to ask questions. They're going to say, all right, press secretary, what's really going on here? Is he changing his story? So he brings some of this on himself. And when you even have Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador, who's part of Team Trump, saying, you know, accusers should be heard. Women should be heard on this, and including the president in that, that's significant.
Let me get to the tweet about Kirsten Gillibrand because, you know, White House says there was no double entendre suggested. But did it resonate for the media because of past Trumpian comments about Mika Brzezinski, Megyn Kelly, and that sort of thing?
I don't know, because Donald Trump has said the exact same thing about Marco Rubio, about Jeb Bush,
begging
about the
for contributions,
Club for Growth. He used to talk about Mitt Romney getting on his knees and begging for money. And it's actually pretty standard rhetoric to say that politicians will do anything for money. The idea that all of a sudden it becomes a sexist insult because a woman is the target of his insult is ludicrous, and it points to how the media way overdo things. Donald Trump is being ridiculous and insulting people, and then they get more ridiculous by saying it's a sexist insult when just saying it's unprecedented.
It's the president of the United States, though, so every word he says has to be measured in a different way.
But Kirsten Gillibrand went on CNN and said Trump should resign, so she threw a hard punch first.
She threw a hard punch, and we know who the counterpuncher in chief is. That said, I don't think you have to have your mind in the gutter to have taken a sexual innuendo there. And I think he's talked about others begging for money. I don't think he is very much, if at all, talked about others who would do anything. He knew what he was saying.
All right, mine's out of the gutter, and we have to call a halt there. Ruth Marcus, Molly Hemingway, Libby Casey, thanks very much for joining us this Sunday.